Okay, well, why don't we start on my side so we can get through the introductory stuff. Hey, thanks, Catherine. Yeah, and Catherine dropped in the chat what she's up to and where she is. So if anybody else wants to do the same, please feel free. But we'll start on the kind of intro slides. So in case anybody trickles in, they won't miss the essential stuff. All right. Well, thanks again for joining. This workshop's title, How Climate Change Will Impact Entrepreneurship. We're very glad to have Lane County's climate strategist, Mark Nystrom, with us to lead us through a presentation of information, and have a good chunk of time set aside for Q&A because we know this is a topic that is best done through conversation. And on that, I think Mark is very open to, along the way, adding conversation in. So if you have questions as they come up, do feel free to use the chat. This event is being recorded and will get posted publicly after. So keep that in your mind as you're moving through the conversation. If you do want to rename yourself, please feel free to do that with your name, organization, and role. And there's an example of how to do that there. We are Oregon Rain. We are a nonprofit that has a mission of partnering with communities to catalyze entrepreneurial ecosystems, which is a fancy way of saying helping to support startup businesses get up and going. And we do that by connecting them to resources. And overall, the mission is driven by an interest in creating a prosperous economy across the state and beyond. Yeah, the way we do that is kind of prioritizing 4 types of connections that we can help you make as your business grows. We can help you to connect to people, whether that's mentors, other team members, or other entrepreneurs to chat about your challenges with. And everybody on the team themselves are entrepreneurs at Oregon Rain. We can connect you to programs, educational ones that we run ourselves, like these kinds of workshops, or accelerators, like one that I'll mention that we're going to be running in next month. And other opportunities that we might know of. Physical assets, if you want to get connected to things like shared commercial kitchen spaces, or figuring out testing lab facilities or co-working spaces, we can help you think through what kind of options are out there, which is more relevant generally in a post-COVID world, but still relevant today. And then finally, capital, because it takes money to make money, and we all know that there's never enough of it. So if you need help developing a plan for your own financing or connections to investors or debt providers, we can help you with this as well. This work is funded through the support of a number of entities at pretty much all levels, from local cities, different counties. We have support from different foundations and different private entities as well, a number of banks. So it's really, I guess, as an entrepreneur myself, it's really exciting to know that there are a number of people that want our businesses to succeed in the state, and these are some of the partners that are involved. And then, yeah, here's an exciting thing that we are launching. It's called MONEYmaker. It's a 13-week financial accelerator program. We're going to meet every Wednesday beginning March 31st and going through till June 30th. So what is that, like 3 months? March, April, May, June, 3 months. And we're going to cover really all the topics necessary to understand what it takes to make a business grow from a financial perspective. This accelerator came out of conversations that we've had over the last year with people in navigating how to apply to different COVID emergency relief funding, and recognizing that a lot of people who should be eligible for the funds might not have the bookkeeping practices necessary to pull the application materials together quickly, or not know how much to ask for, or in the event you do secure money, knowing what to do with it. So we're going to cover all those topics and more, and I will drop the link to that in the chat, or Stephanie and Ariel, if you have that handy, if you wouldn't mind doing that. The application is open, and so feel free to register yourself today because it's going to be a phenomenal experience for those who participate. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and then turn it over to Mark to lead us through today's conversation. Thanks so much for joining us, Mark. Over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Raj. And hello to everyone. It's cool to be in front of a group where I actually don't know everyone. It's kind of unique. The climate community in Eugene is relatively small, and so you start to get to know everyone. So I'm Mark Nystrom. am the climate strategist for Lane County, and was hired about a year ago, little short of a year ago. Back in February 2020, the Lane County Board passed a resolution, and then part of that work was to hire a staff person to come on, and I was that person. Before coming to Lane County, I worked for the City of Eugene as the Climate Recovery Ordinance Analyst, which is a long title to say that I helped the Sustainability Director write the Climate Action Plan too. Learned a lot from that process, and we're trying to avoid the pitfalls that we made in that particular one, and acknowledging the needs of the community in that one, and kind of working forward with that in mind. And I'll talk a little bit about where we're at in that process right now in a minute. And then before that, I worked for the Association of Oregon Counties. So I worked out of Salem and worked as a intergovernmental relations, so like essentially a lobbyist for the 36 counties. So I have a pretty good feel of the state. I think I've been to all 36 counties now. I think I've visited with county commissioners in all of them. So they're probably all long gone. Not, well, some of them are. Some never leave. So it's a great state, and like AOC likes to see, the Association of Oregon Counties, I should say, when you've been to one county, you've been to one county. So I'm gonna go through some of the work that we've done already, and then talk about our greenhouse gas inventory, and then we'll talk about some of the questions that came up, and then open the floor for more questions. So I'm going to try sharing my screen here, and hopefully this will go smoothly. All right, and I think I can do the slideshow, and yep. I'm on the last slide.
Actually.
Sorry about that. There we go. There's the nice title slide. So today, what we're going to talk about is the future conditions and opportunities in those future conditions. And then Lane County Community Greenhouse Gas Inventory results. That kind of shows you where our largest emissions are, both locally and then due to consumption. And I'll talk about the difference between those two. And then the idea of negative emissions and some opportunities that lie there. And then we'll have questions and answers. Feel free. I'm going to pause at the end of every slide. So, and I used to be a high school teacher. So when you get to be 52 years old, you start realizing you have a lot of careers. So I've had a few, but I used to be a high school science teacher. So I'll try to practice good teaching and like actually waiting for people to ask questions. So if you hear me pausing for a few minutes, it's not because, or a few seconds, it's not because of my internet connection, I hope. All right. So here we go. Future conditions for Lane County. This is based on a variety of sources. If you go to the link that Raj sent out, there's a document, and the document is all sourced. So these are all from verified research articles that have been through peer review. So we're looking at an average summer increase of 10 to 12 degrees Fahrenheit, and winter increase by 3 to 5 degrees Fahrenheit by 2100. Obviously, that's going to have huge impacts on so many factors. The 3 to 5 degree, think about this winter, think about those times that we were getting those 32-degree snows up in the Cascades. We're going to see those go away. And then imagine how hot it's been in some of the summer months, how much different that's going to be. So our summertime weather will be similar to East LA, Chino, California, not Chico, Chino. If you look at a map, it's you go down to LA and then you go over a little bit. So it's, you know, LA is pleasant, East LA not so much in the summertime.
Okay.
There's intense precipitation and higher stream flows in the wet stream season. So what the models are showing is that our rainstorms are going to be bigger, and stream flows are going to be higher because there's going to be less snow. So the precipitation is going to go directly into the rivers. We do have volcanic soil up in the Cascades, and it takes a while for that water to filter through. So there's a bit of a natural slowing process. So while we will have sufficient water, we will have increased flood and high water events. The flip side of that is that we're going to have reduced stream flow by 40 to 60% in the dry season. Now this is by 2040. I still plan on being around in 2040. That's not that far away. So that's kind of scary. When we start, you know, so much of climate science is, oh, 2100, I'm going to be dead. But a lot of these numbers are in the near future. It's not that long ago. So looking at forest and forest health, looking at the things that kind of make Lane County unique. We have 90% forest cover in Lane County. The models are showing a 400 to 500% increase by 2040 in the number of wildfires. So I just sat through a webinar last night. The 5 or so individual fires that burned this last summer around the state all make it into the top 40 largest fires ever in Oregon. So sadly, the reality is we're going to see more and more events like that. If you go through California, you know, they've been just getting hammered year after year after year. We're getting closer and closer to that. And then a near total conversion of subalpine forest to other vegetation types by 2080. Doug firs can't keep up with the weather changes is essentially what's happening. And the number of Douglas firs in Lane County is at an all-time high. They're a successful wood product, so we replant them a lot. If you look historically, there were never this many, there was more wildfires in the past that would clear out kind of the undergrowth. But Doug firs have been planted all over the state. They're going to go away. So we need to find another more drought resistant, more flood resistant plant, which is going to be challenging because ponderosa pines fit part of that bill, but not all of the bill. Redwoods and sequoias fit part of that bill, but aren't necessarily a desired building product. So it's an interesting conundrum there. The snowpack in the Cascades will be nearly gone by 2040. Even if you look at the last 20 years, there's been a significant decline. This year we're doing okay right now. And people will often confuse weather with climate. This is weather right now. What happened in Texas is weather right now. It's related to the climate, but you have to look at long-term trends. And the long-term trend is that the snowpack is going to be gone. And then increased population. Currently, PSU does all the modeling for population growth. Their models show us growing to 500,000 by 2050. We're at like, what, 330, 350, somewhere in there. So that's a significant growth, but they haven't taken climate into account in any of their models yet. And we think that there's going to be a huge drive due to climate change to places like Lane County. And I'll explain that in a second. And then increased risk of disease. So I think we're living through a pandemic that's climate related. There's an infringement of humans on the natural habitats. And so there's more animal human interactions that are going on. There's tick-borne disease, mosquito-borne disease that are just gradually moving north. There's some amazingly nasty diseases that exist in the tropics that are getting strong enough to exist in the southern United States right now. So that's terrifying. I'll talk about the population growth here again in a second. And then there's we have a large chunk of coast in Lane County. And so here's a couple of pictures. The picture on the right is the best case scenario. And the year is not in there. I believe it's 2050, but I'll have to look back at, I mistakenly cut that out. It's in the,
This is for Florence, right? We're looking
Florence,
at
yeah. So the area circled is downtown Florence, like the old town of Florence. So the blue that runs through both of them in a kind of an arc is the Suislaw River. You can see the 101 bridge there. Both circles cut through it. The right side is the best case scenario for Florence right now. So like that's Moe's. Everyone knows where Moe's is if they've been to Florence. So that's underwater. Now that doesn't mean necessarily 24 hours a day, but at least twice a day at high tide. And then you look at the left picture, that's if we stay at business as usual. So we don't make huge dramatic changes. You're looking at not only downtown, Old Town Florence, but all of that stuff to the west of the 101. And yeah, that's pretty devastating. And then it cuts it off a little bit in this picture, but the dunes there'll be a lot of saltwater intrusion into there, so that's going to be a huge challenge. And unfortunately, well, there's some movement on the coast to try to address this, and we'll talk about that. We can talk about that later. So I was talking about population growth. These are two maps from a study that were done a few years ago. This is by the year 2090. It seems like every scientist picks a slightly different year. So 70 years from now, 69 years from now, whatever. What they did is they went through and they looked at all kinds of different factors, and I just chose two of them. There's a link to the study in the document that was sent out. It's pretty fascinating. It's actually a fairly good read, but if you look on the left, you can see Lane County in the agricultural yields is actually increasing around 30%. So because of these longer growing season, we're actually going to see a benefit due to, or an agricultural benefit due to this longer growing season. And you can see that throughout everywhere from North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, Idaho, Oregon, and Washington. Where you don't see it is in a lot of the population centers around the United States. So you think of the coastal California looks okay, but through the South and through the Southeast, they're going to see potentially massive declines. If you look, the number one red number there is 90%. That's terrifying. And then what they did is they had 5 or 6 other factors, and they combined them all into kind of a general score. And so you look at the American Southeast, and all those dark shaded areas or red shaded areas mean it's gonna get much, much worse. So these are total direct damages due to things like natural disasters, but they also looked at like crime rates and other economic indicators, and they're saying that they're picturing anywhere between a 20 to 30% decline in the county's GDP. So what I see when I see that is a bunch of people who are going to look for somewhere else where it's less hot, more jobs, and a reliable source of water. And so that's where you get that idea of climate migration. And it's already started. We already have a bunch of people from Southern California moving up here because it's kind of miserable at times. Phoenix, Arizona is one of the largest metropolitan areas in the country. It relies on river water from the Colorado River. Who knows how long that's going to be able to sustain basically all of Arizona. So what we see, and I think is most likely an opportunity. And when I say opportunity, it means we're going to be less bad than everywhere else, but there's going to be people who are going to be moving here. There's going to be people who are looking for economic opportunities. And so that's one of the pieces. So I'm going to pause right there. This is the kind of the doom and gloom section of the presentation. Anyone have any questions about any of this research? And again, that it is peer reviewed. It's available if you click on that link to that article, or that's 1-pager, 2-pager that I posted.
Mark, I have a question.
Sure.
So obviously these are trends. We've kind of not been paying attention to our environment for decades, but has any research been done taking into account the different political climate we have? It seems like, we're a little more awake now politically, in the legislature, people who are making the big decisions are going to start doing green, green economy. Has anybody actually looked at that and maybe, redone these models? What do you think?
Well, I mean, if you're thinking of the Biden administration taking over, the fact that we rejoined the Paris agreements is by far the biggest thing we could have possibly done. That impact on Lane County alone will be bigger than anything we can individually do. And it's because of the way we consume goods, and 40% of our imports are from other US states. And so if they're required to lower their carbon emissions, the goods that we have are going to be lower carbon goods. But the reality is it's not, it doesn't look good. Like the Republicans just walked out of the legislature again today, the Oregon state legislature. So it's shut down. Like things are not going to get better. Climate is unfortunately a zero-sum game. There's no incentive for Republicans to vote on any climate initiatives because their base, there's 20 to 30% of their base that doesn't believe in climate change. So they're not going to lose those middle of the road people for voting for opposing climate change legislation because they don't care enough. And I'm not trying to throw Republicans under the bus. Democrats don't want to lose their middle by taking radical steps on climate change. So we're rudderless still. I would love to see Joe Biden do something aggressive, and maybe he will, but it's going to be piecemeal, I think, from here on out.
But has anybody actually looked at that? Because I sense huge sweeping changes starting this year, in green economy and green energy. But I'm just wondering if anybody's actually looked at that and made, some projections on that and said we can turn things around.
Well, people have done the research. It's not hard. Like the money that the federal government has spent on COVID, if we spent a third of that money on climate change, we would be fine. We just choose not to spend that money. There's 70%, if we just focused on the utilities who are burning coal, and that's not, fortunately for Lane County, this is another opportunity, is that we have carbon-free electricity for the most part. So if we just regulated those 70, it's only 70, it's not very many, large utilities, we would be able to decrease our carbon output significantly in the United States. The problem is it's become such a, this is one of the big polarizing issues. So, and again, I'm not trying to criticize one party or another. It's just that one party is more obstructionist around climate change than the other.
Yeah, I just sensed, I'm reading all kinds of things like, I don't know if it was GM or somebody is going to go all electric with their cars. And it does seem like there is a trend, but you're not, you have your finger on the pulse and I don't. I just read bylines, but you don't sense that there's going to be a big turnaround in the next few years.
Yeah, I mean, GM's going to be carbon neutral by 2035, and that's great. Or sorry, I used the wrong term. They're not going to produce any more internal combustion engines by 2035. A lot of European manufacturers have committed to that too. I think that's probably more that's a business decision. I don't think it's necessarily driven by climate. It's because we're at peak oil and oil prices are going to go up. Our relationship with Saudi Arabia is about to take a right turn. And so gas prices are going to go up. Those are all good for the environment. It's bad for, individuals who have to buy a lot of gas. But I'm politically pessimistic about the whole thing. The fact that we have a Democratic majority in Oregon and we can't pass a cap and invest bill, it's partially due to the fact that the Republicans walked out, but it was partially due to the fact that Democrats didn't have their whole caucus behind it. So, and we need large sweeping acts like that. We're not going to be able to chip away at this. By the way, I'm a huge believer in system level work. And I think that we've all been sold a bill of goods that says that it's our responsibility to take action. I don't think it's fair for like someone who's trying to raise a family and trying to, you know, work two income family. They're trying to teach your kids at home right now, and we want you to make the best climate choices possible. Like, we need to create a system where the best climate choices are the default ones, the easiest ones. So when I go get a car, I want the economic sedan or the big SUV to be fully electric. And that's what we need to have happen. And it will eventually.
Mark, I have sort of a crazy question, not sure if it's relevant, but I've heard some estimates that say that that climate change could actually trigger an ice age. Is that a possibility?
Yeah, if you watch the movie Day After Tomorrow, it actually has they massively accelerate it, but that movie is actually based on some theories about ocean. Yeah, there's some. Oh, that would be terrifying. But so there's a ocean current that essentially uses cold water to cool the East Coast. You know, and there's a Atlantic loop. There's a Pacific one too that circulates water, and these circulatory systems of the globe heat and cool depending on how the currents are going, and they're worried that there's going to be enough disruption in because of extreme heats at the equator that you're going to disrupt this cycle. What's going to end up happening is all the cold water ends up sitting up north, so the equator gets a lot hotter, north gets cooler, and then you get into the cycle where it just gets colder and colder up there, and then these polar vortexes that you saw with Texas would keep pushing down but be on a way more regular basis. But if you can throw back to like, what was that, 1995 or whenever, because it was funny because if you're not old enough, you probably don't remember that movie and Inconvenient Truth came out at the exact same time. And then back at that time, I was a high school teacher, and we were talking. I would show both films and just talk about like which one's got a more effective climate message. I guess that was early 2000s, but yeah, it is possible. But I think I'm not sure where the latest models are. It would be interesting to look that up.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I have something, Nora, that if you looked at Texas and the infrastructure failing miserably, and yet they're celebrating because they got record profits, because that's what it was designed to do, until we actually have enough regulation that, you know, it's not unabashed capitalism without, you know, social justice within that. I don't think we're going to see that until I can remember when businesses used to be judged not just on what their stock price was, but on how many jobs they created, what they did in the community. That's gone away. And I think until that comes back as a way of judging whether a company is successful, we're going to continue to see bad things happen.
I think that's a
My
great
opinion,
transition.
for what it's worth.
Yeah, no, I do think that, right, like, and I'm not a business person, so I do actually have a degree in business, but I never used it. But I think that there is a huge value, right, in there are companies that by a certain percentage of the population value that social contract. And I think that one of the things that people are looking for is companies and industries that view climate as an important issue. And if you actually look, there's some pretty interesting drivers behind why a lot of companies are looking at this, and one of them is the insurance companies are really pushing these issues. But I think that one of the advantages that Lane County has, and this is kind of going back, we do have water. We have sufficient amount of water, at least in Eugene. Springfield has some more issues. And some of the outlying places that are relying on well water, I haven't seen projections, but I know that Eugene's projections are really healthy. And I would guess that Florence is relatively healthy too. Now, if you go out to Oak Ridge, I don't know about Oak Ridge or the other Willamette Valley communities. I know a lot of them rely on wells. And for example, I know that Springfield is a very shallow well. So I'm sure that water probably circulates fairly quickly in it. So we have water. The other thing that we have is almost 100% carbon-free electricity. So if you're doing if you're like the city of Eugene or Lane County and you do a greenhouse gas inventory, if you're not using a lot of natural gas, you're already starting with a low carbon footprint immediately. And so if you're looking at only having to offset or buy RECs, renewable energy credits, for 5 to 10% of your electricity use, that's a huge shortcut compared to, companies like Microsoft and Apple, where they're literally building wind farms. We already have the wind farms. We already have well, it's mostly Bonneville power, but we do have a lot of wind power behind that too. And so it's carbon-free electricity. And so I think that that's one piece that we have to remember. And yeah.
Could you go into why it's carbon-free? What are the sources? Is it wind or hydro?
Yeah, I actually have a slide about this, so just give me 2 seconds. I'll pull it up. It's kind of in case this came up, I brought it up. So, so this is this is the county's electrical use. So all the residents in the county. And so on the left bar, the blue bars represent the utility, how much the utility sells. The orange dots represent their metric tons of CO2 delivered. So if you look, the emission factors are for everyone except for Pacific Power. And Pacific Power just has a very small number of folks down in Cottage Grove as their customer base, but everyone else is really low. So EWEB's orange dot just moved up a little bit because of they had to shut down a couple of their dams while they were, Carmen Reservoir was shut down for a while. So they had to go into the market and buy some other stuff. But the vast majority of our electricity in this area is purchased because they're publicly owned utilities and because the federal government, for better or for worse, dammed up the Columbia River. We have access to public electricity. And so this is the vast majority of it's Bonneville power. And so like, what's that? It's 80% hydro. They don't talk a lot about this. It's 10% nuclear, and then wind and solar make up the rest. Occasionally they'll fire up a natural gas facility to hit peak demand. They're called peaker plants, and they're easy to turn on and off. So they only turn on when there's high demand, either in the morning or the evening. When you look at Pacific Power, that's owned public, or it's a privately owned, it's an independently owned utility. And they import a lot of their electricity from out of state. And there's coal burning power plants from out of state. They have a renewable portfolio standard that they need to meet. And so they're gradually bringing that orange dot will over the years lower down. But unless you're in like a small section of Cottage Grove, you have access to remarkably clean electricity. And that should be something like, I know that Ann Fifield at the City of Eugene is well aware of, and we've talked a lot about, like, how do we market this? How do we market this for folks who have like this green cred issue? So, and it's unique. There are other communities that have this in Oregon, but I think that we have a unique combination here.
Yeah, just like the 2 minute. How will that change with population growth?
So most of the load growth is being met with conservation, if that makes sense. So if you think about your home, you probably have way more electrical stuff now than you did 30 years ago. I don't know who asked the question, so I don't know if you're, what your home was like 30 years ago, but the average homeowner had all these different appliances. But remember, everything took way more electricity back then to run. So LED lights take a fraction of what your old incandescent lights. Refrigerators today are way more efficient than they used to be. Microwave, same thing. So as long as we continue to invest in things like heat pumps instead of using furnaces, and we can decrease our load sufficiently. There's two elephants in the room on this issue. One is a social justice issue around the fact that all the Bonneville dams are on native lands, and that was it was sacred land to them, and it was never acknowledged really formally by the U.S. government. So there's a definite issue there about the fact that we took and flooded massive parts of their community. The other piece is that those dams are filling up with silt, and the question is, what's their life cycle? And then how do we transition off of that? Again, we're getting, EWEB's getting 80% of their power or 90% of their power from Bonneville. There's some people in the community that are worried about, like, what's that transition going to be like? And those weather changes I was talking to you about are going to impact the dams in the region, because you're going to get lots of rain in the winter. They're going to have to empty some of their dam, like just let the water flow through. So there's some issues there. Let me buzz through you can see our electricity use. But let me go through oh, by the way, just since we're talking about electricity, this is the map of electricity use in Lane County. It's kind of complicated. Apparently in the 80s, they allowed communities to vote on who got what. I think it was that recently. Maybe it was longer than that. The Central Lincoln PUD, I found out yesterday, is the oldest public utility district in Oregon. So there you go. So anyway, let's run through this really quickly, just so you know where our greenhouse gases are coming from. So here's a summary slide of our greenhouse gases. Everyone likes to talk about, like when you talk about environmental issues, a lot of people bring up natural gas. A lot of people talk about recycling or waste management. Our 6,000 ton, 3 million ton elephant is our transportation system. We emit nearly 3 million tons of greenhouse gases locally due to our transportation system. That is huge. Our building energy is around 1 million. Waste disposal and industrial processes and livestock are all significant, but not zero, but really small compared to those other things. And there's some caveats that I'll get into. I'll talk about the other two, the burgundy and the blue, in a second. So here's it broken down by percentage. There's a per capita number there. That's not really all that important. What's really important is that 66% of our emissions are due to transportation. Approximately half of that is due to gasoline, and half of that is due to diesel. Our diesel numbers, diesel is usually 30% for a community. Ours is higher because we don't know exactly for sure because our data isn't as precise as we'd like. We think it's probably due to long haul truckers that are filling up in Lane County and then moving on. So while they're only in Lane County for maybe a half an hour, whatever, I don't know how long the I-5 is through there, half an hour, let's say. If they stop in Coburg and fill up, it's in our inventory. Building energy is primarily natural gas use, and then waste disposal is primarily the landfill, which Lane County owns, and we have plans to do something about that. Industrial processes and refrigerants is primarily refrigerants. Refrigerants are mainly mobile trucks that have refrigerators on them. They bounce around a lot and they tend to leak a lot of refrigerants, and those are thousands of times worse than a carbon dioxide molecule in terms of greenhouse gas potential. Livestock, the only thing we could really pull on is the number of cows and sheep that were in this county, and that's basically their gases that they release, so burps and farts. So you can see that that's not zero either. So questions about our sector-based, and sector means like locally within the county emissions that are emitted.
I'm a late arrival. This is Skip Sponsell speaking. I'm just curious, the metric on transportation energy is measured by what comes out at the fuel pump.
Right.
What do you suppose the green bar would look like if you said, no, let's not measure what gets pumped out of the truck stop. Let's rather try to capture the emissions from all the other people's cars that drive through north and south on Highway 5 from Coburg down to the bottom. Would it be as big or smaller than that green bar?
That's a great question, and I'm going to go with the law of averages. That on average, someone is either they maybe they stopped up at Corvallis at that Arco station that's Highway 32 or whatever it is up there, or maybe they're going to stop in Coburg. I don't know. That's a good question, but I would guess that based on average, so the protocol for this is that you just have to draw the line somewhere and hope that your numbers are accurate. There's another protocol that we're going to talk about in a minute that's called the consumption-based protocol, and it talks about your use of gasoline because you're a Lane County resident, and we attribute it to you.
Can I ask one more? Can I ask one more
Sure.
question? The green bar. Suppose that you magically compress that big green bar down to nothing because you switched everybody to electric vehicles. What would happen with the other bars?
Well, we would have to come up with a different metric to account for the electricity that's being used. So we break it out into building energy and transportation energy. There is I don't know if I have this particular slide. There's like 0.0 something X of our electricity is due to our emissions on that big green bar are due to electricity. So it would get captured in the protocol. We'll never get that transportation to zero as long as there's some carbon emissions associated with it. And I will put a caveat on it. We don't have a solution right now in the pipeline. Well, it's a longer term is things like long haul trucking. Batteries are probably not the answer. Maybe, but they're looking at hydrogen fuel as a solution. I know the city of Eugene was looking into like an electric fire truck. And I got to ride in the prototype, and they're really cool, but they're 4 times more expensive than a regular fire truck at this point. So I think the solutions for that are 10 years down the road, but and maybe we'll make some sort of massive advance on battery technology, but that's going to be a challenge.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Mark, sorry, we had one other question, well, a few more, but just I think one
Yeah.
that directly connected to, I think we're going to cover next from Michelle. Michelle, would you want to come off mute and ask that one that you asked about the human?
Yeah, and I can't see the chat right now because I'm
Yeah.
trying not to blow my mind.
Michelle, would you want to? I'm also happy to just to read on your behalf. She asks, I've never seen any kind of metric around human carbon emissions, carbon dioxide emissions. Are they so insignificant? Are they so insignificant as not to count, or is there some other reason why population numbers don't figure into the equation?
Yeah, so the way that the sectors are the sector-based emission are defined, that we're not included in that. We are part of the carbon cycle, but in the consumption-based, you'll see when we get to that, you'll see some of that. So let's circle back around to that in a couple of slides. All right, this is something that I think should be interesting for a lot of you who are interested in your business. Again, like I started with, hey, if you can do electricity, you're golden because you already have low emissions. And I don't know how much people follow local news in Eugene, but the local climate activists have been pushing. The city of Eugene is working on a franchise agreement renewal with Northwest Natural. And so the activists are really pushing for no new residential natural gas infrastructure. and some fees and programs that go along with getting renewable natural gas. It's a really interesting discussion. I never got to be part of it. They kept me out of it, so I wish I knew the inside dirt. But I do know that the politicians took off their gloves in the last month and just said that Northwest Natural is holding us hostage at this point. That was a Mayor Venice quote. So, but it's really hard for industrial and commercial uses because, like, if you're, for example, a coffee roaster, you have no other opportunity to, there's no good, from what I understand, electrical coffee roasters out there. That natural gas fired ones are better. And so that may or may not be true, and I don't want to debate that right now. I've been told that. But there's other industrial processes like paper mills who are using a lot of natural gas. And we don't have a good solution for that right now, nor do we probably have the load to meet all the commercial and industrial demands on our electricity system. So I just wanted to highlight the natural gas piece. It's a big chunk. And then here's the others. So wastewater, our landfill takes up about 175,000 tons. For the county, that's huge for us. The wastewater plants, the only one that really keeps track of this is MWMC, which is the collaboration between the City of Eugene, City of Springfield, and Lane County. These next two values are estimates based on some statewide data. We just did it per capita because we don't have specific numbers. And then, like I said, agriculture, the only thing we really have is livestock waste. We haven't looked at land use data. We assume because we have fairly strong land use laws, there hasn't been a lot of conversion of forest or agricultural land to industrial, commercial, or residential. That's where that would come in. And then we don't have good data collection around soil amendments. So we don't have the highly fertilized crops in Lane County. So it probably isn't a huge deal, but it's not zero either. So that will change our results. And so this is kind of leading into this idea of consumption-based emissions. The idea is I have a cell phone here, right? And my cell phone, I plug it in and I use electricity, and that gets counted in the building energy section. But the reality is 90% of my emissions due to the cell phone were emitted before I even opened the box, right? There was extraction of raw materials, there's the manufacturing process, there's transportation, there was the store that got it sold in. So a few years ago, people started making these estimates on total consumption-based emissions. The idea would be that based on your zip or either your census blocks or your zip codes, they try to drive it down, and they know what your economic levels are, and so they make these estimations based on the typical consumer in that economic range. We don't have polling for every person, how much stuff they buy. So these are all kind of modeled. But what's really interesting about this is that it's nearly half of our emissions. If you live in the city of Eugene, it's 66% of your emissions. And so when you break it down, it starts to look like this. So goods, one thing I want to highlight again, remember we were talking a lot about transportation. If you look at the transportation fuel production, it's huge. So that goes into, that's the upstream emissions due to gasoline and diesel. And then you take vehicles and parts, you add all that together, that's nearly 4 million tons of carbon associated with cars and trucks. But you can see things like meat and dairy are huge. When you look at all the produce and cereal that we consume, it's pretty small. I'm not a vegetarian. I try to eat close to that, but like that's really the climate solution is to avoid, red meat in particular is particularly bad climate-wise. And then a lot of people like to ask about air travel. The way air travel is calculated, this is not flights in and out of the city or the Eugene airport. This is wherever you fly, wherever in the world. So if I go to Africa and I fly from one African country to another African country, that gets dinged against me. And air travel is huge. It's a big chunk of emissions. not that many people fly, and yet that bar is relatively large. So are there questions about consumption-based inventories?
I do have a question about the slide. Is this the universe, or is this Eugene?
This is Lane County.
Okay. You created this slide? Wow.
Well,
how many weeks crank this out?
It's actually my contractor did it, but it's a spreadsheet. And you're basically entering population, like someone, so Oregon DEQ, by the way, we have one of the most phenomenal departments of environmental quality, or not natural resource, but environmental organizations in the country. They're leading on climate stuff and waste, those two issues, waste and climate. They're way ahead of a lot of places. And so they developed this model, and it's been converted a couple of times. It's pretty interesting, but yeah, at this point, it's a spreadsheet, and you kind of have to fill in a few blanks, and it kicks it out for you. And it's based on census data and income data.
Yep. So,
and I would say, by the way, we report to the ones place. I'd probably be more comfortable with like the 10,000s place. You know, like if you're familiar with precision, we report way more precision than we really know. I will say that.
Mark, if
Yeah.
Since we've had our COVID shutdown, I know things look a lot different, and it seems that some things are just not going to come back. Like people realize they don't have to be there in person, so maybe air travel is going to be reduced, clothing, and some of the transportation and stuff. Has anybody done a study on that to, kind of see what it might look like? We're not going to be using the buildings for offices as much as we used to, so maybe building materials will be reduced. What do you think?
That's a good question. I think that, the models of people, companies that have tried to do distant employment in non-COVID times there's a solid at least 25% of employees who just hate working at home. So I think, and one of the problems is like my office, which would normally hold like 12 or 13 people, have 1 or 2 in it, but you still have to heat and cool the building as if there's 12 or 13 people in it. So we're not seeing a lot of gains in that area right now. I think you're right about the transportation piece though. Like these kind of meetings, it would have been difficult for me to gather us all together, and there would have been a lot of emissions associated with, but we can do these kind of things much easier. We don't have to drive from the coast into Eugene or whatever. So, yeah, and I'm sorry, we're talking so much about inventory that we're not getting to what we're, some of the reductions. I'm going to go back to like the summary here. I will say, I'm going to jump back here, is that when we do our protocol, we don't look at sequestration, but we do sequester about 3.5 million tons annually in Lane County, and that's definitely not a zero number, right? It's a huge number, and there's value there, and we don't know how to value that yet. And I just read an article today about how all these major corporations have made all these climate commitments, and they're not going to reach them. So they're going to have to buy offsets to get to their carbon goals. And so carbon offset prices are going through the roof, apparently. And so there's potential there for opportunities. And only about 22,000 tons of Northwest Natural customers, I think it's about a quarter, sorry about my dog, about a quarter of the Northwest Natural customers, it's less than that, are participating in their program. This is one of the easiest things. If you're a Northwest Natural customer, just sign up for their green power program. It will offset the equivalent amount of what you use, and they're investing in some cool projects. So it is a good, easy action to take. It costs like $5 a month. But so here's our summary. This is kind of the whole thing. And I'm just going to briefly talk, and I know we only have 3 minutes, but there was some questions about EVs earlier that came in before. EVs are definitely a big part of the solution. Right now, our problem is that if we want to balance equity in our investments, EVs are primarily aimed at middle class and upper middle class people right now. So the county is acting as a convener, bringing together the 7 utilities that operate in Lane County, and we're looking at strategies. It's really interesting though. The Coast Central Lincoln PUD, their public works, or their public what's that, public relations position, sorry, I'm in the public works department, so I get focused on that, is a huge EV advocate, and they've been working with dealers, and they've been working with communities to try to help incentivize adoptions of EVs. They've had quite a few people take advantage of they have I think it's a $250 grant to put in a level 2 charger, and I think 50 or 60 people have already taken that up with them. It doesn't cover the cost, but it at least gives you a little bit of down payment. I do think that there's interest in developing a coalition of utilities. You know, if EWEB chipped in for a level 2 charger or a level 3 charger in Florence, Eugene residents would benefit because they're going to drive out there. And the bottom line is, for every EV that gets purchased in Lane County, the utilities get money from that, about $2,500 annually through the Clean Fuels program. Yeah, they get $250 cash on the EPUD. Customers get $750. EWEB has some incentives as well. So, but in terms of, so here's my number one takeaway. If you're interested in your communities taking more climate action, show up to the city council meetings. Like, it's super effective. Everyone I've talked to has said no one shows up to our, and the other thing is, remember, utilities are public entities that aren't cities. So they're a separate public group. So you have to show up to their board meetings too. And there's certain utilities within the region that aren't taking very many actions because no one shows up to their meetings asking them to. So.
Thank you so much, Mark.
Yeah. And folks, if people want to, I mean, I don't want to put Raj on the spot, but if you want to stick around for 5 or 10 more minutes to ask questions,
great.
I'm willing to do so.
Perfect. That's what I was hoping to do. And I do know, well, I guess just before we transition to that period, I do want to say thank you to Mark and for the county generally for investing and considering these topics, because they seem so consequential and complex that we're lucky to have people like Mark focused on figuring out at least what the heck is going on. So people in our positions can maybe recognize the opportunities to tie together business and positive change. So thank you, Mark, for that on behalf of all of us. And I know that there was a handful of questions that didn't get asked, including from, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on your name, the gentleman who had his hand raised. Nate.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, so for those who want to drop off, please feel free, but if you do want to stick around, thanks, Mark, for sticking around too.
Yeah, no problem. Let's do these rapid fire. Just go ahead and ask. So Nate, what's your question?
Yeah, Mark. So I guess, I tuned into this because I feel like Oregon Rain has a unique opportunity here because so many of us are in rural communities. And I think, to your point, that even in a state like Oregon with, big Democratic majorities, if one party is not willing to engage on it, it's really hard to make progress. So actually, I don't know what the answer to this entirely is, but I feel like if we are going to make these actions, we need rural entrepreneurs who understand how to make sure that how we address climate change is seen as a real moneymaker for rural communities. Maybe that's through sequestration or changes in agriculture, but I feel like there's a real opportunity here thinking about rural communities because we have to have them on board in order to, to make these big changes, I feel like.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And when I worked for the Association of Oregon Counties, the majority of the folks there were Republicans, and I have great friends still within that world. You just have to frame it a little bit differently. So you don't talk about like EVs, you talk about clean air, you talk about local business development. We have Arcimoto in Eugene, which apparently is valued at like $1 billion now, which kind of blows my mind. But anyway, and you talk about like economic development opportunities for a cleaner, safer, more livable environment. But a lot of them will say, well, let's deal with that on the market, a free market side. And then renewable energy, you know, the counties are the biggest supporters of wind power in the state because they get revenue from that. So if you live in Morrow County, you get a college scholarship because they literally have more money than they can spend right now from the county government. And Lane County is not in that position. So yeah, I think that there's a lot of opportunities. It's just a matter of framing.
Yeah.
Any other, and Raj, if you want to just read the questions off, I'm willing to give my shot, or, oh, Skip, go ahead.
Yeah, actually, I came in about 20 minutes late. I couldn't get away from the other guy, sorry. And Raj referred to your wonderful efforts of explaining what the heck is going on. Did I miss a part of the presentation that was what the heck you can do about it? Or can I ask some questions about that?
Yeah, so one of the things that I really didn't get a time to jump into is what Lane County's plan is. So right now we've created an internal plan, and it's on our webpage, which is the same kind of place where I sent you with those other articles. And the essential idea is, I would, like, if you're a business owner or an individual at home, you can look at a lot of the strategies that we're taking and apply them to your place of business or your home. So like the number one thing that we're doing around our buildings is we've committed to buying 100% RECs for the 10% or so of the electricity that isn't renewable. So that's a renewable energy credit. And if you're any of the utilities in the county offer a green power program, and that gives them a little bit more money to invest in infrastructure, that green infrastructure essentially. If you're a Northwest Natural customer, you join their smart energy program. When you're ready to replace your sedan, whenever that might be, buy an EV. You can get EVs with 300 plus miles that, like right now, the Kia has a deal right now where you could buy their 230 mile car for like $3,500. It's a lease, but $3,500 down. The state already gives you $2,500 towards that, so it's $1,000. And then it's then it's $200 a month lease cost. And if you're driving a lot of miles, it's 239 mile range, like, and that's just one example. I just happen to know that one off the top of my head. You're going to reduce. I was driving 700 miles a week for a while, so like that would cover my gas cost, no problem. So yeah, and then
can I ask a question about all that?
Yeah.
So the strategy is to push and enable a broad range of voluntary behavioral changes by the populace at whole. If you take the sum of all of that and say, wow, if we could get 100% compliance over N number of years to all these cool behavioral changes, what percentage of the whole problem, if you can define the whole problem, I'm not sure you can, but if you did, what percentage of the whole problem would be resolved by just the wave of uniform adoption of new practices on a voluntary basis?
Yeah, you missed my soapbox earlier. What I was talking about the idea that I don't like. I'm telling you what the voluntary actions you can take are, and it's kind of like going to carbon confession. The reality is, what we need is, because we're not going to get that anywhere close to that kind of compliance. We need to go to we need to have international and national level action, and the only reason why counties and cities are in this game is because we've seen just no leadership whatsoever at the federal level. And I know that there's some great ideas out there, like the Green New Deal, that are loaded with great ideas. But until we get the political will to pass those are just ideas. And so the counties and cities are trying, but we just don't have the same levers. We can pull this teeny tiny lever of like, hey, here's a local gas tax. But it's not the same as CAFE standards, which, President Trump threw out the window. We'll get those back, but.
So on that scale of action, there's a cost factor to anything that you do, and a pain factor as well. So what's your notion of the single most important big thing to do that chokes off and kills the fewest amount of businesses and people in the process. So what's the biggest bang for the least amount of bucks and corporate pain? Where should the vector be?
Well, as I was saying earlier, and again, I think that that's a false narrative. Honestly, I think that the federal government, if they chose to do it, could do. Like I saw an analysis that a fraction of the money that we've spent on COVID relief would get us through the Green New Deal. So, like we as and if you, I don't know how much you want to get into this, but like I'm not worried about the national debt. We have a solid foundation. So maybe I'm wrong, but that's just not my political hill I'm going to stand on. So I think that the federal government can do a lot of the work that we need to do, and and not pick winners and losers, but subsidize the potential losers. But the right now the number one thing is electrify the transportation system and decarbonize the grid. But our grid, this is the thing. It's been how many years since we've invested in infrastructure? And look at what happened in Texas, and that's from deregulation, obviously, and the fact that they are in this unicorn situation. But the rest of our grid is failing too, and so I don't know. I think that what's happened is we've had 30 years of negligence in terms of our infrastructure around the country, and then we're going to get it toppled or coupled with a bunch of repeated natural disasters. I think that inaction is going to be way more expensive than action.
Mark, on that note of action, one thing that Alexandra dropped into the chat was the Bring Rethink certification. Do you want to speak to that in the context of
Sure. Yeah, Bring will come out and well, I don't know if they're doing it remotely these days, but and I will say a caveat, my sister-in-law runs the program right now, but they'll come out to your business and they'll give you an evaluation. And what they've done is they've added a carbon, I don't know if they've implemented it yet, but I know that we were working on it together, a carbon checklist so that you can figure out what things that you can change. But yeah, again, we're in a great position here because we don't have to make those huge investments in the electrical infrastructure to decarbonize it. And that's where I think from a business perspective, that's a huge opportunity.
So what businesses do you think could, or what areas do you think if a business was looking for investment or somebody was looking to start a business to address some of the issues, is there an area that you think has the most support here, where they would have more, I don't know, more tread in Oregon to do that?
That's an interesting question. Alexandra, do you have any insights onto that? Oh, I never introduced Alexandra. She works in our economic development team. I told her I was going to put her on the spot at some point.
No, I apologize. I didn't catch the end of that question. Could you repeat it?
Sure. I'm just kind of wondering if someone's looking for opportunities for their business opportunities in this. Are there recommendations by your group in sectors to look at or in areas to look at that we're going to be headed down where there's a lot of opportunity?
I mean, so we don't have any county level recommendations. We do have our 4 main traded sectors that are currently a focus of Lane County. I do know that at the state level, they have a lot of focus towards traded sectors, which usually include food and beverage, agriculture, technology, wood products, stuff like that, just because of the job creation on the more state economic development side of things. But I don't have any business recommendations other than my personal opinions of, just the fact that entrepreneurs can get those niche markets that don't typically get taken care of by the larger companies. So there is, I mean, definitely take into the fact of future proofing your business strategy, and looking at those efficiencies both in your supply chain and in others, and reaching out to those to like our business partners such as Oregon Rain or the Small Business Development Center or the Bring Rethink program, just to kind of help shape those ideas and make sure that you can try and be as future proof as possible around these different changes that are going to be happening. Does that kind of answer your question a bit? I know I can't like fully.
I know. I just didn't know if you were hearing any trends or things that the state's particularly interested in supporting or shifting towards.
Yeah, so there's definitely a lot of trends towards supporting traded sectors, but that's always been kind of a trend on the state level. And those definitely include the wood products, and food and beverage is a really big one, as well as like smart ag and stuff like that. So those are kind of some of the major ones for Oregon. And those have always been, for the most part, major sectors in Oregon. Our food and beverage has definitely grown in the last like 10 years. So that's one of the ones that are starting to get, that are definitely being supported.
And I would just remind everyone, remember our growing season is going to be increasing quite a bit. And so a 30% increase in agricultural output, that feels like it's a good niche to be in. And then I would guess that, the one thing that I was thinking that would be a really interesting project, and unfortunately COVID hit, but the concept of promoting Lane County as an electric county, and just as a tourist destination for those who were in EVs, and putting a network. Someone asked about it or mentioned a network of charging stations at some point, and we have gaps, but it's filling in pretty nicely. With a bunch of level 3s along the I-5 corridor and level 2s scattered throughout the county, but just ensuring that we can get enough level 2s so you don't have to drive more than, let's say, 30 miles, and getting the hotels and lodging industry to focus in on putting EVs for customers and places of business.
I don't know if you caught it, but somebody mentioned that Driftwood Shores does have 3 EV chargers there.
Yeah, and like hotels.com, when you search in cities that there's a significant number of chargers, you can put that as a filter now. So it's kind of cool. Yeah, and there's some surprising places around the county that have charging. And I think someone asked about the coastal charging. I highly recommend you reach out to Chris Chandler is her name. She works for Lane Electric, or not, sorry, wrong utility. Lincoln PUD, Central Lincoln PUD. And if you have an idea of where to put it, someone needs to pay for it. And, you can get a coalition of people together, though. It's not like a level 3 charger. Level 2s are maybe $5,000 to $10,000 versus level 3s can be up to $150,000 each. So it's expensive.
Well, everyone, thank you so much for coming, turning out, and caring. And thank you to Mark for putting together this information clearly. I mean, this is 2 for 2 on conversations where the conversation keeps going far.
Yeah.
Like hopefully it's the first of many. Mark, you had previously, I think, said you're comfortable sharing the slides, which I'll then pass on to the group. Ariel from our team is recording this presentation. So we'll get it uploaded and share, because there's a handful of people that said that they could either join for portion or couldn't attend and want to. But please thank me for joining Mark. Join me in thanking Mark for this presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, and can I just add, the last note would be, if you have another group that wants an hour presentation like this or an hour and a half, please let me know. Or if I said something that was controversial or I get excited. So sometimes I say things that I'm probably more vested in than I should be. But please reach out to me and let's talk, because I do really believe in this, and I believe that we just need to get the whole community behind this. So again, if my email's there, but Raj can send it out too with the slides.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Mark.